Right, so this video is going to go through the specifications screen. And we're going to start it in the costing screen just because a lot of the specifications are actually built here via this S button. And we've touched on this in a previous video, but basically what this S button does is when you click it, it will grab the description and also the heading and pull it through to this specs screen. The idea is that it's a bit of a checklist, and you might have 150 things in this costing screen and you want the customer to see 75-ish. You can go through and just pick those via this S button, and it's a great way of just showing them what they need to see. For example, things like screws and nails. The customer probably doesn't really mind about those too much, but they definitely want to see things that they can look at. So paint and fixtures and light fittings and switches, etc. So I've gone through and clicked a bunch of these S buttons. And just before I jump into the spec screen itself, I just want to make one little point here. So if I go to, say, electrical, which in this example, haven't actually put anything in here, but I just want to make a point that you can actually use the S button on things that have no cost. And the reason that we've allowed the software to do this is particularly for something like electrical or plumbing or maybe roofing. You will get a quote for those quite often, and the quote will just come back as a single figure. But it's probably going to include a whole bunch of these things. So light points, probably door chimes, dimmer switches, etc. And a really easy way to make an inclusions list is to use this kind of preset checklist. Obviously, this is our standard one. You can customize it however you like. But yeah, really just to point out that you can use these even though there's no cost, granted that the total cost of the electrical will come from a quote. Jumping into the spec screen now, it looks very much like the costing screen, it just doesn't have any costs. And if I go into any of these categories, let's say the appliances one, for example, so they've all come through. I know they've come from the costing screen because they have this lock here. And I tend to tell people that that S button will get you about 90-ish% of the way here, i.e. you will still want to come in probably and add a bit more. So you might say, installed by qualified trades or qualified electrician, whatever you want to say. The other thing you might want to do is adding photos. So for example, I might go cooktop and double click on it just to go into edit mode and click again here. And it's taking me back to my computer and I'm just grabbing pictures off there. So this was for the cooktop, which I've got one here. And as far as where these images came from, I literally just grabbed them off Google. Catalogs are really good. Google's great. Bunnings websites are really good. So for example, if you were just looking for images for the wall oven, model numbers are fantastic, particularly if you know the exact one. The images section of Google is just brilliant. So you can go find the one you are using and right click and save the image, grab it back onto your computer and then load it into Build Exact. So I'm going to do that just for one or two things. We'll go that one, an oven, and that'll do for that one. There is two other points just to be made here. One is we often get questions about how do I handle exclusions? And it's a really good question. So there's a couple of ways of handling it. And it depends on the exclusion type. So if it's an exclusion as in, hey, this is part of the build that we're just not tackling, a really easy way to do this is just to add a new category and say exclusions, and then add in the items that you are purposefully excluding. For more generic exclusions, we'll talk about this when we get into quote letter. There's a terms and conditions area where you can also put things there. Another thing worth a mention is just making the building of this specification section faster. So there's two things really to mention here. One is back in the costing screen, and that is that the presetting of these S buttons can be part of your estimate template. So you can preset whether they're going to be on or off, and this is true for the P buttons and T buttons too. You can preset if they're on or off, and that will just mean that your specifications almost get pre-built as soon as you start the estimate. You can also, in your template, go and add things like exclusions, which will just sit here every time. So you can definitely pre-do a lot of this work so you don't have to redo it every time. Lastly, if you are the type of user who has, let's say, several different models, or you want to have different specifications for different types of work, and you'd rather just keep a whole set of those and just drop them in as you go. So I'm thinking more here for the smaller jobs, maybe decking work, small renovations, extensions, where you've got a really good scope of work and you just want to keep using the same one. You can absolutely keep presets in here as well. So you just save it and then you drop it in every time you need to use it. So plenty of options there, bound to be one that will work for you. The next video will be looking at the quote letter and then ultimately how these specifications print out. But for now, that's how you get your specs ready.